All right, so this is the regular scramble of my 23 PR single. This was actually my first ever attempt officially maining DR, and so this was like crazy to get with my first attempt. So I found a bunch of four-move EOs. I'm not very good at finding EOs in general, so that's all I had written down, just like 6 different EOs. The EO I chose to do was on FB axis. I saw that it was one, two, three, 4 bad edges, and I could set them all up on the B face by doing R prime, D prime, L prime. So now I have all 4 bad edges on B, so I can just do a B to get EO. And here I saw I had 1 edge in the E layer and 1 corner oriented. But I see this massive bar here and this corner here. So if I do a U prime, R prime, that gives me dr minus 4e4c. And this is actually a crazy good dr minus 4e4c because I have this bar connected already here, and I have this partial bar right here with this corner in the U layer, so I could just bring it down here, and now I have 2 bars, and I just have to do 1 more move to DR. And that is what I originally checked, U2, B2, U prime L. However, that wasn't the DR I ended up doing. I did a variation of that where I did D2, F2, U prime R, and that's pretty much the same thing, just gives a different E layer. And after that point, I switched scrambles. Okay, so this is the inverse scramble. I saw that I had this pretty big block right here on yellow, and I could insert this orange edge to make a 1x2x3 with M prime U2 M. And for FMC, I wrote it as L R prime F2 L prime R. I actually did an R prime. And this gives me like a really good setup here. Like you can see that this is yellow side is almost done, and all I need to do is insert this corner, which I can do with U prime, R2 U, R2 U prime, R2. And that just so happens to solve both layers on my DR axis. So if I just do U2D prime, I am left with 2E2E on the E layer. And at this point, I knew with the U2D, I could solve it in 5 moves, and that would give me a 26, which is PR2. So I was already really happy at this point because I knew I did pretty good for my first ever DR attempt. But I had heard of leaf slice before, and I knew that this was what that was. I didn't actually know how to do it. All I've heard before was that you're supposed to widen the DR layer moves, and you can hopefully try to solve the slice in less moves, maybe none. And so I started just experimenting with that because I still had so much time left. I think I had found this with 30 minutes left, so I just spent some more time. I was just trying out random stuff. I think before I actually tried this scramble, I just did some random cycle, and I was just trying out, like, if I'm doing random DR moves, how can I solve that? And I figured out that I can just widen the U and D moves, and if I do it correctly, it should cycle these edges somehow. So after I kind of figured out how leaf slice works, I started trying to do it on this scramble. And so I just undid all of the DR moves I had with the edge cycle done. So I'm just inverting the last few moves of the scramble. So that was DU2, R2U, R2U prime, R2U, and then That's where I decided to just leave it at. And so I figured out if I did this sequence, so U prime, which was the same, R2, which is the same, and instead of doing a U, I could do a wide U, which is the same as doing a D move. So wide U, and then R2, and then wide U2, and then U, R2, U. And I don't actually like writing out wide moves, so I just wrote it out without wide moves, and that's what it looks like. And at that point, when I realized I just did it in 0 moves, I started kind of freaking out because that was a massive PR. I had a 25 with blocks before, and not only just getting PR with DR my first attempt, but using an advanced HTR technique was crazy to me. So I'm super happy with this solve. I don't see myself beating it soon. I'm sure I can probably manage to tie it a few times, but yeah, I think this will definitely be PR for a while. All right, so this is scramble 1 of my 2733 official mean, which is very good for me. I probably average closer to 29 to 30. So super, super pleased with this. So I found a bunch of EOs here. Well, not actually that many, but there's several formu EOs. And I did it on the regular scramble. So the EO I chose to do was on the LR axis. And quick note, I only check FB and LR because I'm bad, so I don't check UD unless it's like a horrible scramble. Then I'll scramble in a different orientation and check it. But for these attempts, I never checked UD axis. So on LR, it is 1, 2, 3. What? 1, 1, 2, 3, 4 bad edges right here. And I saw that I could solve them by doing U prime, B, F, and then that would set them all up on the L face, so I can just do an L, and that solves EO. And here I see that I have 2 edges in the E layer and 3 corners oriented, which is not what you want for DR, so I had to do a little bit more to get it into a setup. And so what I did was B, which actually very nicely gives you DR minus 2E 4C, which you can solve with an RU2R type setup. And here I see I have this little partial bar here, and yeah, that's pretty much it. But what I want to do is U prime L2 to create the bar, and I actually am very set up now for the insert. I can just do U2 D2 and F prime D2 F, and that gives me DR. I actually did F prime at the end. So now I have DR in 12 moves, which is pretty average for me. I would say that I average 12 moves for DR. And here I just kind of built a bunch of blocks. So I did U prime, R2U, R2D. That gives me a 2x2x2 with a bunch of blocks here. So I can just do R2, B2, U2. And that actually solves like everything. So now I just have 3C, which, you know, for DR, you don't want to be doing 3C. But I think I only had like 25 minutes at this point, and I like to start my insertions at the very latest 20 minutes, preferably sooner. So once I'm already sub 30, I just try to do the insertion that I found. And so here I had a 3C insertion. I wrote out my skeleton. It was 20 moves to 3C, which was good enough for me because I knew I would get a 28 worst case. And so I went through my skeleton. The insertion was at this pot. So right here, the corners look like this, and you can insert a comm like this, and that cancels one move with the B that comes right before it. However, this actually wasn't optimal, which was really disappointing because I would like to say like 99% of the time I can find optimal 3C because, I mean, it's super simple. But there's actually a better spot to insert, and that's here. And you can see the reason I missed this was just kind of a simple mistake. It has U2, D2, F prime. However, because U2 and D2 are on opposite layers, you can actually swap the order of them. So you can do D2, U2 instead of U2, D2. And if you did that, it actually cancels two moves with the U2 and F prime, which I realistically should have seen, but can't be too upset about it. So yeah, that wasn't the best solve, but I'm still very happy considering it was just attempt 1 and I was off to a good start with a 27. Okay, so this is attempt 2. I started on the inverse scramble. So on the inverse scramble, I did my EO on the LR axis. I saw that I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bad edges that I could set up by doing R prime to reduce to 4 bad edges, and then D prime B U2 to get them all on the L face, and then just do an L prime to solve EO. And here I saw I was already set up for DR minus 4E4C, which is my favorite setup for DR. And I have this partial block here and no other blocks. So I can do a U prime R2 to create this partial block, and having these two blocks in this form is actually really nice for DR. And then I can do an L2, F2, which creates both blocks. And now I just do a U prime D2B, and now I have DR. And at this point, I switched to the normal scramble. So this is the normal scramble. I just wanted to start block building here, so I started on yellow. I saw I had this little bar here, which I could pair up to orange with a U prime B2 to get that 1 by 2 by 3, or 1 by 2 by 2. And then if I did F2 to create that block, I get 1 by 2 by 3 in 2 more moves. And here if I do an F2 to create this block, I can actually just solve the entire puzzle directly, but what I did to do that was D prime, L2, U prime, L2, and I get that big bar there. And then I saw that the white started to get set up, so I was realizing I could probably do a pretty direct finish from here. So I tried to do it in a way that would solve the E layer directly. So I did D2, U prime, R2, and here I'm just U prime, D prime, F2U. So that was an 11 move finish from this point, and that gave a 28. However, I didn't feel like that 11 move finish was as good as it could have been. I felt like there was definitely some room for improvement. So I just undid those moves and I just started trying a bunch of different things, and I saw that if I did U2 D R2 D prime F2, and here it's just the same kind of thing to solve it, and that actually was one move shorter, so that gave a 27. And when you got to this point, you could have done something like U prime F2 U prime F2 U prime F2 U prime, and that would give 2E2E, which I didn't actually end up checking. However, optimal on this was 27 anyways, so not too upset about missing it because I found the correct solution without doing any extra work, which is always fun. So yeah, starting off with 227s, I started to get super nervous because I knew like I only needed a 33 to tie PR mean, and I felt pretty confident in getting a 33 or better. So I was kind of already thinking that I got PR mean, even though I hadn't done the third attempt. However, I did know like it's anything can happen. So I could have lost it by like throwing super hard, but yeah, so pretty nice. I'm super happy with myself that I was able to find this 10 move finish, because I mean, I wasn't even sure like why I thought the 11 move finish felt bad. I just kind of had a feeling that it could have been better, and super happy that my instincts are starting to point me in the right direction. All right, so this was the last scramble, and immediately, as soon as I saw the EO, I was just like, all right, bet it's time. I'm gonna get PR. So I just had to continue with the attempt. So there's a 3-move EO on the regular scramble. And you see there's on FB, it was on LR axis. I had 1, 2, 3, 4 bad edges, and I can just set them up super easily on the R face by doing FB prime, and that gives me EO in 3 moves. And here I saw I had DR minus like 6E or 6C 6E as well. And what I wanted to do was set it up to DR minus 4E 4C. And the way I did that was by switching to the inverse scramble. And so on the inverse scramble here, I saw that if I did U2 F prime, I would get DR minus 4E 4C. And it's actually super good because here I just have this partial block and this full block here. And so here, if I just did a R2 to get these blocks from the same layer so I can maneuver this corner here to set up here. And I didn't want to do it exactly like that because then when I create the blocks, my E layer edges are not correct. So I had to do instead of doing a D, I did a U, and then F2, U, F. And that gave me DR in 10, which when I saw that, I was feeling even more confident. And so here I saw that I had this big block here already, and I have some other blocks going around. So it was very blocky DR. So yeah, I saw that this was a super blocky DR, and I spent a lot of time trying to find something on this, but I really couldn't. So I went back to my RZP and I was trying to look and see if there was a slightly different DR that could be better. So when I switched back to the normal to try looking for better DRs, I saw that if I did a R prime instead of an R at the end of my EO, I get these two partial blocks here, which is really nice. And so if I did a D prime B2, I get a full bar here, and then I can just do L2. And then I'm set up to have them both on the back with a U2 D prime B and a B prime. And so that gives me DR in 11 moves, which is still very good, even though it's not a 10 mover. However, this one I found a bit more to work with because I could see that yellow is super, super easy to like just start setting up. So I did a R2 to create this block, and then U L2, get a 1x2x3 going. So I get the 1x2x3, and then if I continue just trying to block build, I saw if I could do R2 U R2, get this, and then U R2 U, and that gave me 3C in 22, which is not good. However, I knew that would be PR by a good amount. Would be worst case 28-33. So that was satisfying for me to just continue with. And so I went and wrote down the skeleton, and at this spot, so at that spot, the corners look like this, which it's a very nice case because there's two different comms you can do here. And the comm I ended up doing was just like the standard OLL alg. And that canceled 2 moves because the first move of the comm and the last move I did was a B. And then the next move I had to do was an L. So that canceled with the B2 and L2. So it cancels 2 and gives a 28, which thankfully at least was optimal on this insertion. And as far as I could tell, it was the only spot that you could cancel 2 moves on. So I'm happy I found it this time. And yeah, that gave me a 27-33 mean. I don't expect to beat this soon. However, I also don't think I can beat this that easily if I don't, with my current strategy of just doing DR and block building. So I am probably going to have to start trying to learn HTR so that I can improve this. But yeah, FMC is now like by far my second best official event, which is crazy. I didn't think I was that old yet, but here we are. Thanks, Evan, for letting me do so many FMC attempts. My last, 4 FMC PRs, maybe 5, probably more than that, have just literally been in my basement. So pretty nice to be able to compete in the same setting that I practice in. Definitely an advantage there, but yeah, if you guys want the same advantage, organize comps.